Back on Inside Tennessee, talking about the fourth grade dilemma. We talked about third grade retention, this new move by the legislature last year to ensure that children are not moved on to fourth grade if they don't have the skills. Eddie, you were a lawmaker for a number of years. Again, I want to go back to just the legislature as we pass it on to you for your questions, but sometimes lawmakers pass something and then look at it play out and say, we need to make some tweaks. Do you think that's going to happen here?
That is always the case with the legislature, and the reason being is because, you know, they're trying to set statewide policy for 972,000 students statewide. It's not going to be perfect, but let's go back. You know, when I served in the legislature, reading proficiency in the state was somewhere around 34-35%. Statewide right now it's around 40. Knox County is around 43%. But that means still 57% of the students are not reading at grade level, which means they're falling behind their peers. Now, their peers are not peers of another county or even another state. Their peers are that overseas student that's going to be competing for the job we're trying to prepare them for. That's where the legislature is coming at. And honestly, it's frustrating from that side of things, because when I met with our school board that's completely changed over, but met with them and asked them what their approach to actually fixing and spending money to improve reading proficiency, they had zero plan. They literally were just leaving it up to the legislature to figure out. Well, the legislature figured something out. They now don't like it. So now what is the school boards? How are they investing money? And we heard, Dr. Phillips say, they're really focusing on early intervention. So that's really where I think that it's going to have to come down to, is the local school boards, the local policymakers really honing in and fixing this problem to get the legislature to back off. Because we've got 97, 120 some odd school districts around the state. You know, everybody's doing it differently. So, we see great things coming out of Knox County. And again, we are blessed in Knox County because with one of the largest school systems in the state, the third largest, we're not in the same boat that the others are in when you look at total punishment that they really get from the legislature.
And I know you had a question for Dr. Phillips, so fire away.
Yeah, and again, it's just looking at that, we talked about those early interventions, kind of talk the vote, everybody through that's listening out there, what Knox County really has done over the last couple of years, even before this really kind of came down, to focus on that early intervention, because you don't want the legislature mandating mandatory tests. So what are you all doing to ensure those benchmarks that students are meeting in K1 and 2?
Sure. So one of the first things we did is when the law changed and we had to adopt high quality instructional materials, we were really intentional about choosing materials that align with what we know is evidence-based practice and teaching students to read. And so our teachers are embracing those materials and teaching students with a systematic, explicit approach to learning to read. And that begins in pre-K, honestly, in Knox County, and stretches on into our primary grades and into that third grade space as well. We have foundational literacy standards pre-kindergarten through 5th grade. And so all of our teachers in those grade bands are using the materials that have been adopted by Knox County. In addition, what we're doing is we're really thinking at the student level for data. And so what are we collecting on what kids know and can do that reveals maybe where some learning gaps might be, and then we're making strategic and intentional decisions about who are students that might need some targeted support, what might be the best instructional method to deliver those early interventions, and what materials might move us along the way. And we're progress monitoring as we deliver routine interventions.
And you said two words in there, evidence-based.
Yes.
What's interesting there is that most people might not understand. A lot of times you hear train and hope, that we're going to teach and hope that this works, but you all are actually using evidence-based models that are proven to actually work.
So the evidence is gathered through testing, right?
Through testing, through research, through lots of ways, but we look at data, both quantitative and qualitative data.
So how do you deal with the pushback that we hear that we are over-testing our children in schools when we really do need to test to figure out what we need to do to raise these reading and literacy rates?
I think when you think about testing and you think about the word assessment,
Right.
in the mind of an educator, assessment means a lot of things, and it's not always a test.
Right.
We can gather data through various types of assessment. And so when we think about overtesting in the formalized manner, it's important that we do some of those formal assessments that are nationally normed so that we can know what's the current reality of student knowledge. Where are we stacking up to national norms, and what might we do about it to see that number increase over time? But I also think that we have to have teachers think about what's the other type of assessment you're collecting day to day that paints the real picture of what you know kids can do and where their future learning needs to go.
What would you see? I mean, one of the talks that we've had for many weeks on this show are the issues about vouchers and how they're going to drain the school system. So flipping that sort of on its head, what kind of additional resources, since we may see a drain on some of those resources, do you think you need financially to really accomplish what you want to do? Because we talked about in the first block, there's really no pathway out of the 4th grade if somebody is not achieving what they need. There's not free tutoring, there's not a variety of things that could be done to help that student. What, if you got a sum of money, where would that go to improve our system now?
So one of the things we're working on in Knox County right now is this idea of instructional coherence. And what that means is that a student's learning experience is cohesive or aligned from what they get in their core instruction, so with their general education teacher in their main literacy block of instruction, to what they receive in those support services. So what do they receive in their RTI, in their small group instruction, and how does that material align? So in our ideal situation, students would have connected materials in every learning experience they had throughout the day so that there weren't any unintended barriers to learning.
And to Don's point, what would you like to see if indeed there were some money to be gathered from the state that wouldn't go to vouchers but perhaps more to Knox County? Where would you like to see it go?
I'd absolutely love to pay our teachers more. I think that would be the first thing, because I think, when we have seasoned teachers that are experienced, that have so much experience, and then can take some of these skills and knowledge and studies and data and put it to work for our students, I think that that's what I'd really love to see. But also funding the tutoring, funding the summer camps. I think that they are a really great thing if parents can depend on them and plan for them.
We've got to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee, but we'll be back. John will lead us off in our final conversation about this topic when we come back.